Hello?
Hello.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm being heard here. Still a minute or so out from class time. I'll start at that. I'll try to start on the money here. Let's see how many people we have here. All right, it's about time. Let's see. Okay. All right, I guess I'm good to go here. All right, so this Zoom thing is new to me, so you guys know better than I do what I should be doing. I could probably stand to learn some best practices. Can you guys see the syllabus?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good. So for today, I'm going to be happy with just trying to learn how to wrangle Zoom a little bit. We'll talk through the syllabus. This is a course which relies on a one very special, very extra important piece of software, which is the Unity game programming platform. So I'll try to give you a steer how to get going with that if you haven't yet signed up or downloaded it. Then I'll leave you guys to hopefully take care of that and be good to go for tomorrow. And tomorrow we do have we have a double. We have 2 hours tomorrow. So starting at 1, I'll come on. I don't know that I'm going to use the whole 2 hours, but I might use more than 1 hour. And we'll start actually doing something with Unity, and and you'll be seeing a lot of Unity from the start of tomorrow all the way through the end of the quarter. Okay. So, well, hang on here. This is not the right. A syllabus, but the wrong syllabus. Okay, here's maybe the right syllabus. Okay. Right. So this is also this should also be available online via Sakai. Michael Guerrero will be co-teaching the section with me. Are you there, Michael?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Michael does have some Zoom experience, so he already helped me get started. But Michael's part is mostly going to be toward the end of the course. So kind of the tail end around the time we switch to advanced topics / a project. So he may be buzzing in and out as his schedule allows, but mostly the lion's share of the course and certainly the beginning weeks are going to hear a lot from me. So our meeting times are what they are, 1400 pretty much every day but Friday, and then the extra hour tomorrow on Tuesday. So textbooks, so yeah, this is a great example of a course where it'd be pretty silly to have a textbook. We are mostly going to rely on on the lectures and also on the online resources that are available to anyone using Unity. So the Unity engine is, at least the last time I checked, had like the largest market share, I think by a good bit, of the game engines. It's also very heavily used in education. So large number of people using it, large number of people being required to learn it in one way, shape, or form. So hopefully that equates to a reasonable amount of information online. So there are definitely, there is a manual that I will be kind of going through using to guide the things I'm talking about. I mean, I'm not going to try to talk about every subject in the manual, but I'm going to kind of pull out all the main ones and talk about those. So the manual might also be something you want to refer to. There are tutorials. That's how we're going to start the course. So I'll talk about that today in case you've got Unity up and you're raring to go. So you can already get going on the first week or two of work on your own. Material is really mostly just going through these tutorials. And there are plenty of other ones that are out there. There are forums, so I don't tend, unless Google directs me to a forum post, I don't tend to really browse the forums. But there certainly are forums out there with plenty of Unity information out there. And Unity themselves has a for-pay learning service that is temporarily, and we could probably thank the coronavirus for this, it's temporarily available to everyone. So I don't know that I would really give you I don't know that I would give you a hard steer to go jump right into that stuff, but you can at least take a look at it. And certainly there's nothing wrong with, since a lot of this class is even normally, even when we're not doing it online, it's a lot of self-directed learning. So by all means, if you look and see what's there and you like it, I mean, some of the topics there, the topics that are in their premium service span the whole gamut, from the kind of introductory tutorials that I'm going to kind of force you to do by making it part of the initial assignment, all the way to things that are very much oriented toward people that are going to make their living, or plan to make their living, hope to make their living programming or doing art for Unity. So keep that in mind. If everything may or may not, everything's almost surely not at an appropriate level for you, regardless of your interests. But if you look at stuff and you want to jump into it anyway, by all means. What else? I think that's mostly it. Hopefully the recording, and I'm relying on Zoom to do the session capture. My plan is to push that up to YouTube, as I've done for other classes, when it's over, and then send you guys a link. So we'll see how that works. So hopefully we get the bugs out of that. I think you guys will find that a good, at least it's a good resource of last resort. If you know I said something about a topic and you really can't get faster information about it anyway, you'll be able to browse back through the lecture. All right, so Sakai is there. There won't be a ton of material there, but I will be pushing material down to you guys on occasion, just because sometimes it's handy for me to make a little Unity project and push that whole thing over onto Sakai and ask you guys to load it up, so you have a better starting point than in an empty Unity session. Okay, right. So this course is kind of the flip side of the graphics course that you've just gone through with Michael last quarter. We rely on that course to really help you understand what computer graphics actually is, which allows us in this course to focus almost exclusively, well, not quite exclusively, but we focus for the most part on the practical aspects of building simulations that have 3D graphics in them, which is pretty much any new simulation that we're going to be using for the present and foreseeable future in DoD. Now, the reason why we thought this was worth a course slot is simply because, I mean, it's good background information for anybody, for sure. It's definitely the case that you guys might be consulting on new 3D graphical simulations or new 3D interfaces to legacy simulations. So that part's all good for sure. But what really made us willing to give up a whole quarter, one of our precious quarter course slots for this topic is really because back in the day, we saw some people struggling when it came time for their thesis projects, because not every, but a whole lot of thesis projects and moves either rely on creating your own simulation, or probably more likely tweaking some simulation that was there. But in some ways that's even worse, right? You got to understand this big thing that was built by a company or was built by your predecessors in moves. So that was really the rationale. And the list, the drop-down list I have over here, not drop-down list, but the list you see in front of you are just some summaries. There's just a wide range of circumstances in which we found move students needing practical, hands-on, immediate capability in building simulations with graphics attached. So one of them could be maybe surprising to some people back in the day. They kind of knew they weren't like really heavy on the technical side. They weren't going to sign up for a thesis where they were going to have to write tons of code. So often that means for moves, okay, we're going to run an experiment. You're going to run a human performance experiment and gather data. But then you find out, well, what's the experiment going to involve? Well, we're still a modeling and simulation enterprise here, so it's going to involve a simulation, and quite often a graphical one. And you're going to need to tweak that thing in some way to make it, what's known as, a stimulus, the thing you're going to put in front of your subjects. Even if you're gathering, you could be gathering very low level types of human performance data. Hasn't been done very often in moves lately, but I mean, you could be doing very basic stuff like, reaction times or something like really basic like that. But you might need a 3D simulation to motivate the subjects to actually have them, to do. You have to measure a performance. What's the performance going to be? So without a simulation these days, I don't know what your other options would be. Okay, so even that was like the most extreme case where someone might have thought they were certainly not going to have to. That we weren't going to have to do any simulation work, but creation work, but they ended up doing it. Okay, and then the other ones are even more obvious, right? So you're interested in training, but you want to train some task which has never been trained before. It's pretty obvious you're going to be either building your own simulation or tweaking one in a major way. If you're doing support for analysis and you're going to have to, your job is to create some visualizations. Well, how are you going to create those? It wouldn't have to be done in Unity, but Unity might be a decent tool for doing it anyway. Last but not least, you might be doing some completely unrelated software or hardware. Well, let's say you wanted to do some security-oriented kind of a project. But again, because everything is modeling and simulation focused, you might need to create some maybe very small but non-negligible little toy simulations as part of your demonstration for your thesis. So that's where we were back in the day. It's probably coming up on 10 years ago now, and we had a discussion and decided that it was worth a course to really make sure that everybody came up to a decent level of capability with 3D simulations. Okay, so now, like I said, it's not the case that we're going to totally abandon, trying to add on to your substantial graphics knowledge. I will be commenting on how the technology works, and my hope is that you'll also learn quite a bit about more advanced aspects of graphics and animation and so forth through this course, but it's not the main focus of the course. And you'll see that right away when we start getting into the assessments. So there are no tests in this course. There's nothing but project work. All right, good. So we'll find some kind of a battle rhythm here. What I'm anticipating is that we'll we'll basically have labs due on Tuesday. Because the labs are usually going to look like do something in Unity, so you're going to be creating something graphical. It's probably, well, let me just start with what I know. What we've always done in the past is that I've asked students to actually demonstrate their work, rather than trying to submit it to Sakai. The problem with any kind of substantial graphical app is when I download it, I run it, even assuming everything's good and it runs perfectly, I don't necessarily know how to demonstrate your work to its best advantage. But you probably know that. So I really would like to try to find a distance learning analog of that, probably using Zoom. I think what I would just start out with, not tomorrow surely, but a week from tomorrow, is that I'll just, okay, so here I will float a proposal. So one way to do it would be that we would just have a normal Zoom session, and then I would just ping each one of you individually, and you would, I would pass over control to you, which I kind of forget how to do, but I will hopefully relearn that. Pass over control to you for 5 minutes, and you will bring up your project, and you will just kind of demonstrate it with me taking notes, and then offline assigning you a grade. So if we did it that way in the main Zoom session, obviously your grading session will be visible to everyone. I mean, I won't be assigning you a grade, but everyone would see what you did. Everyone will hear my verbal feedback to you. I mean, when we did it in the classroom, we just had everyone sitting side by side. So it was kind of like that anyway, almost. But I don't know. If you have reservations about that, I'll ask you to send me email, and I'll consider that. I'm sure that there are private rooms and other things and other mechanisms, other software tools we could use for the lab checks other than Zoom, other than the main session of Zoom. So let me know if you have problems with that, and we'll, or now or later, and we'll make adjustments. We'll make it work. Okay. So what you see below is kind of a typical schedule. I'll just kind of breeze through this because it'll, I can't promise we'll be on that exact same schedule because I really have no idea how it's going to work, whether the distance learning, it might just be fine and we'll just have a normal quarter aside from not sitting in the same room, but we could also have problems. So, and even so, I don't really run the class in a rigid way. So what the class normally looks like is, you will be looking at my screen, which will have, guess what, Unity running on it, and I will be demonstrating for you something that I think is, useful and relevant for our topic that week. That's really what the bulk of the lecture is for this class always. And then what the labs look like are, some version of, oh, those topics that we want to, we went over some physics in class, last week. Okay, please demonstrate, these 3 points in a Unity application that you make and prepare for, of course, I'll tell you exactly what the deadline is. There'll be 3 specific points, or sometimes it'll be, pick 3 out of 5 or something like that. And then you'll go off and, hopefully, assuming you're following along at all, you should be able to do something in the vein of what we've been covering, and then you'll demonstrate the best that you've got. And then toward the end of the course, this will be roughly about the time we switch control over to Michael. We have every year we've had time to do a project in this class, which I think is a very good thing. So just to start from the get-go, given that I'm still going to be doing all the lecturing in the earlier part, I mean, Michael will set the parameters for the project, but in the past, so I've kind of oriented things toward, assuming that if you didn't have any other particular interest for the project, you'd probably make some kind of a simple first-person, simple-ish compared to a real product. Let's be real. Even if you work very hard, a simple-ish first-person shooter kind of a game. That would have, that's, a very good vehicle for most of the learning points in the game, in the course. But it's certainly not the only possibility. But you'll kind of see as I go through and I ask you to build stuff each week, especially if you have in mind that you'd like to build some, particular kind of a first person kind of an application, by the time we get to the end of the labs, you'll be in very good shape to go do that. And in fact, you may have, also accumulated some, some assets, some graphical models and so forth, some code even that you already, you understand, you created it yourself, you understand it, you like it, and you should be in good shape to charge ahead and do a first person shooter-ish kind of a final project if that is your wish. No pressure though. I mean, so some of you might already know, oh, I'm gonna use Unity for my thesis, and my thesis is about some completely unrelated thing, and I would rather spend a couple of weeks toward the end of the course, starting to prototype that. That should be possible. So this is why I go through I asked for brief proposals, and I've asked Michael to do the same thing, just so so you can also be maybe a little past the half point of the class. You can kind of say, okay, this is what I think I want to do for my project, just nothing so lengthy, a paragraph or two, because if what you want is something that really is, very different from anything we've seen before. So the issue is what's really mandatory for the project is that it have a certain level of difficulty and it have a certain ability to incorporate the technologies that we've been talking about through the course. And it doesn't have to incorporate every single one, right? Like a first person camera is like one of the things we'll play around with in the course, I hope and expect. But that might not be appropriate for your application. So you'd be like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And, maybe physics is something that is not very relevant for your topic. Okay, so this would be a chance to say in your proposal, look, this is what I actually want to do. And then you can push that over to Michael and myself, and we can look at it. And, if we think that the level of difficulty isn't there, or if we thought that, it's really what you want to do is really very narrow, and it really is just going to, all the weight is just going to be on one or two technologies from the course, then we might advise you, we might have a discussion with you and try to, redirect you somewhat. But that having been said, at least, my bias has always been that, if it's something that you want to do and it is fairly relevant to the course, generally you're going to do a better job of that. You're going to learn more doing that. And if there's benefit beyond the scope of this course, because it even possibly could help you with a thesis, my own personal view is that, that's a pretty good reason to give you some latitude. Any questions about that? Okay. Good. All right. So, So the first several weeks of the course is going to be, Unity up on my screen, me doing some things. You'd be very welcome. Usually, it's possible for you to be following along. We'll see how that works with Zoom, because if you're trying to follow along, then you're probably going to need to interrupt me more. But I don't have any problem with that. It's not a race. I think we have plenty of time for what I need to convey to you in terms of lecture hours. So I would say you ought to be able to try to follow along. Worst case, again, there'll be a recording. You can try to follow along with the recording. But what will be the topics? Okay, so so to begin with, I'm going to ask you to do the first thing that's listed here under the first week. I have as intro and tutorials. So tutorials will go through probably most of your first week, at least part of your second week, maybe most of your second week as well. They're fairly substantial. These are tutorials. I'm not going to talk through these in the lecture because that would be way too boring. But they're ones, the rollerball one is one that's been around for a while. Students have learned a lot from it. It's relatively short. Makes you build this, very simple but kind of complete game. In other words, there's mechanics to it, there's scoring to it, there's a beginning and end to it. So I think it's a really great example. And it also has video tutorials that go along with it. Again, so I don't feel the need to do it in class because I would just be kind of recreating in probably a worse way what's already there. So that should be the first thing. So if you want to do something tonight with Unity, I would suggest the rollerball tutorial. Once you're done with that, you should proceed to this more substantial one called Haunted Jaunt. John Lemon's Haunted Jaunt, which is like a newer thing. I just went through it myself. I didn't really care for the beginning of it, but I kind of got to liking it by the end. It's a very different kind of experience from the rollerball. It's not a video-based tutorial. It is a web-based tutorial. There are pluses and there are pros and cons to that, for sure. So like at a first exposure, you probably are going to like the video better. At least that was my experience. I really kind of missed the video when I was getting started with Haunted Jaunt. But where the web-based kind of text and still image-based tutorials really shine are if later you're like, so as an example, because some people will go there. So one of the topics I usually don't have time to go into is animated characters. That's really not my thing. But they do a lot with animated characters in Haunted Jaunt. So it could be like weeks from now, you have a vague memory of adding in animated characters or an animated third-person avatar that represents you in the scene, and you want to do that for your application. The beauty of having it online in text is that a Google search with some luck should be able to pull it up. Or worst case, you can get on the tutorial pages and just do a web search on the page in your browser and hopefully put your finger on the spot where they did the step that you've now forgotten but need to do. And with videos, that usually takes a lot more time to find that magic point in the video that actually has the 10 seconds, which has the button press that you're missing. So anyway, it's new. We're going to try it. The one we've used before has now been deprecated, so it's really not even a possibility. Please give it your best effort and let me know what you think. Okay, so we'll start in then probably tomorrow, just opening up Unity, looking at the basics of the interface, which is for any of these tools is pretty intimidating if you haven't worked with it before. Then they're actually this week, there won't be any lab check of any way, shape, or form because it just doesn't make sense. And then by next week, I hope to have, by next week, we should have covered some modeling and texturing. So what we're talking about here is creating 3D objects to put in the scene. And so I'm not exactly sure because the lab checks previously were the end of the week. Now they're going to be on Tuesday. So I'm going to, I'm definitely going to have to adjust my expectations to what's reasonable given the timing. So there might be a lab check where I would just ask you to fire up Rollerball so I can kind of see your final version of Rollerball. Maybe. There almost certainly will be one where I'll ask you to fire up your final version of Haunted Jaunt. Yeah. Beyond that, it will mostly be your own creative work and much less, there is a right answer kind of an assignment. Okay. So again, actually could be this year that the modeling and texturing will go faster. I'm looking at trying to take you through this Pro Builder tool, which is actually integrated very tightly with Unity that Michael put me onto. I think it's at least worth a try, so we'll give it a shot. It's a little bit simpler. Like in the past, we've used more of a full-scale tool. We use Blender for our class. The other kind of tools that are similar that you might have heard of would be Maya or 3D Max, which are kind of the pay versions of Blender, if you like. They're all at least intending to be professional solutions for 3D modeling and animation. Pro Builder is definitely not that. It's a much more simple thing for kind of quick level building and maybe simple object building. But I think it might be good enough for our learning objectives. Anyway, we're going to give it a try this year, and that should at least speed things up a little bit through the modeling and texturing. So could be that we could use that extra time since I don't know how the quarter is going to go. Okay, after that, what they have here is week 4. This might actually be our week 3. We'll see. We'll start talking about actually doing stuff in code. Now, one of the things I want to say is that, and one of the reasons why I really like the tutorials, I mean, the tutorials you will find, they're kind of nice. they take you by the hand. It's, you know, it's the bar for getting the tutorials right is not very high. They step you through a whole lot of things. Unless you spend a lot more time than the average student on it, you're probably not going to really develop a capability in each of those areas, like for character animation. You know, they'll tell you what to do. They'll tell you what buttons to push to make the thing work. They probably don't give you enough to really let you do it on your own, at least in a lot of cases. So that's kind of the rationale. So, you know, you can almost look at most of the stuff I'm going to talk through the first, you know, half and beyond of the course are going to be topics that you're going to have touched in the tutorial. It's just that you didn't spend all that much time on them. You certainly didn't open up a blank Unity scene or your own scene and try to deal with the technologies in your own context. That'll be where I'm trying to get you through the lectures. Okay, so even stuff like scripting, I mean, you will see it. It's very apparent when you read through the Haunted Jaunt tutorial or the other one. They're not assuming you know anything about coding. They're pretty much just telling you, hey, type this in at that point in the code. But that's not adequate for you guys. I mean, you guys have just spent 2 quarters learning programming. You all have some level of programming capability. So you need to understand it at a deeper level. So that's where we'll start at, you know, on the scripting topic. We'll go through let's see here. Hey, sorry, I need a Zoom timeout here now. Let me see. There's a chat. Oh, hey. Okay. All right, so it's a private message. Okay, I will get to that after we're done. All right, so, all right, where was I? Okay, so yeah, so just to give you the, you know, the 1-minute version, the kind of programming we're going to do is really not very hard as programming goes. You know, dealing with the whole system and building a whole Unity application, that's a whole nother story, and programming is just one little part of it. One thing you should know is it's going to be a new language because, you know, you have to use what Unity uses. They use C#. So it's going to be kind of, it does look similar to Java, JavaScript. I think in spirit, it's a lot closer to Java than JavaScript. And there'll definitely be some arcane looking expressions that will seem very weird the first time or two you do them. But after you go and use this stuff for a while, you realize that, oh yeah, it's like, it's always that same thing. Like, oh, to get a component, that looks so weird. But like, once you do it 20 times, it's just the way Unity does it, and you just absorb it, and you're able to deal with it. That's been my experience. I think I think most students would back me up on that. Most of the advanced cohorts would back me up on that. Right. We'll also talk about at some point, maybe that same week, we'll do some physics. So we did some physics in the JavaScript class, for those of you who were in the JavaScript class. But that was like very basic from Newton's laws, assuming that everything's just a particle. You know, can you get from a differential equation to some code which does something with that differential equation? That was the focus there. And now the focus is more on, okay, we have this, you know, professionally produced piece of software, Unity. It has, you know, pretty world-class physics capabilities built into it. You know, what are those capabilities? How do you deal with them? How do you actually hook them up to anything and use them for anything? And as you'll see, you know, we won't be writing the physics code per se, so yay, but it's not necessarily all that easy to make the physics work. Well, so caveat, so Unity actually does a tremendous job of making the most basic things almost seamless. And it's like, to me, I've been around for a while, I've seen a lot of different systems, it's almost like magic, the way they make it, you know, possible to just, you know, make an object that you can put in a scene, and when you let go of it, gravity will grab it and pulls it down and it bounces on the ground. And that stuff is like, oh, so easy, okay? But very rapidly, once you start wanting to do your own stuff with the physics or using some capability that happens to be in the physics engine, you start having to know some things. You know, you really start having to have some knowledge to do it comfortably. So we'll try to get you there. we will spend time on navigation. So what navigation means is it's the capability of an entity in your simulation to move from point A to point B. So yeah, like a lot of you have just come out of an AI class. Okay, like A-star search and all that. Yep, it's there, but it's under the hood. So this navigation capability is its own thing to learn. It's not completely trivial. There are some wrinkles to it, but again, we're not going to write AI code, well, of any complexity in this course. You know, for as a simulationist, anytime you have an entity do anything, you know, if it moves, if it winks, if it wiggles its toe, you know, I call that AI because you're producing behavior. Because so in that sense, we'll be producing AI, but not the heavy lift stuff from an AI course, not this quarter. We will also do audio. We will do some amount of particles, so particle systems. So those of you who have been through a graphics course know what kind of thing I'm talking about. The kind of thing you would use because you need smoke in your simulation, or fire, or rain, or you know, decals. Decals I'm going to have to look at. I had to pull in a third-party package last year. I might do the same thing this year. I might not. Decals are like little marks that you'd make on a surface, like a bullet hole. Like you just shot on a wooden wall. You'd like to have a little hole appear there. Decaling is the technology people use for that. Okay, now very late. So if you've been fogging out, please pay attention here because some students didn't like how late this comes, but I think for practical reasons it kind of has to come late. But we are going to cover full terrain in this class, including foliage, hopefully including water, skyboxes, and fog, and all the 9 yards. But most importantly, for simulationists, real terrain, you know, hills and valleys, defiles, and all the kinds of stuff you might think are interesting to put into your simulation. But you'll have to be patient for that. That's, you know, if you're super interested in that and you want to skip ahead and learn it early, you know, by all means. But for me, I think it's most comfortable handling that after you're already quite capable with Unity in general. So that's why it is where it is. But if you're thinking ahead of what kind of a game, what kind of an application do I want to do for my project, realize that you will have terrain at your disposal. That will be a tool that you have come time to actually execute the project. Okay, now at the end here, this is where I'm not sure. I don't know if we're going to be moving faster or slower than normal, so we'll see. But one of the things I've covered in the past are HUD and other GUI elements. So what I'm talking about is not the main 3D scene, but the other elements that are around. You know, if you see some text on the upper left that's telling you, please proceed to waypoint alpha, or if you're seeing a score up on the upper right, or, you know, all that other stuff that's not the main 3D scene, that uses its own infrastructure to produce that stuff. And also, though I don't think you know, it could be input widgets too. I haven't normally covered those. I don't anticipate doing that. Like if you wanted before, let's say before the application starts, you're doing your app is going to be a data gathering app, and you want to elicit, you want to basically survey your subjects online before they start. So you want to give them a bunch of options and have them click in and maybe type in some information. That would also come under the same general heading, even though I don't expect to cover that, but it's the same kind of systems we'll be looking at. We should be able to give you a leg up anyway. All right, and then at some point, minimally, so the projects for this class minimally require a couple of weeks. So we're talking about proposals midway through, but hopefully 2, maybe 3 weeks. I don't know, it'll depend. That'll be Michael's end of the course, so I think we'll give you a steer on that. But that would be the kind of time you'll have to actually pull the project together. It's not a real lot, so that's one of the reasons why it does make sense to, if you have some idea from the get-go that, oh, I think it would be cool to do this, or oh, I might need this for my for my thesis, or, you know, even for another course that I'm going to be taking later, you know, whatever your motivation, I don't care. Then you might want to select appropriate kinds of assets and do appropriate kinds of things that will actually slot into your final vision, you know, as to the extent that's possible. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm going to twist your arm when I give you the lab assignment each week, and, you know, probably not every week you'll find that things are horribly relevant to your particular project that you want to do, but my hope is more weeks than not, it will be relevant. Okay. Yeah, I would, if you don't have a bitmap editor, you might want one. I don't know that I'm going to force you to go into it, but I might. So you should have it handy. GIMP is a free one. If you got Photoshop or some Photoshop Lite, that might be okay. I don't even know the default Microsoft tool or whatever ships with a Mac. Maybe there's something reasonably capable. I don't know. But you probably, if you're not sure, like if we're going to do anything with a bitmap editor, it should be able to handle transparency. That's one of the things that the simpler tools in the past, at least, haven't done well. Okay. Good. API documentation. Great. Assignments are all going to be building stuff, and you show it to me, and I grade it to you. Grading is 100% lab. All right. Okay, so I want to just start looking at the Unity website and the download procedure, but I'll just take a breath here. If anyone wants to jump in with questions or comments.
I just wanted to say for Mac users out there, if you're wanting something like the GIMP, but much more user-friendly and not as expensive as Photoshop, there's a program called Acorn. It's $30, and there's also a military discount on top of that. And it's very easy to use. It works. You can work with layers, transparency, and all the stuff like the GIMP has, but much easier.
Okay. Okay, I'm sure you're not the only Mac user. So, right. Good. There's a lot of other boilerplate stuff here. Let me just leave that. Okay, so have you guys, okay, question. Have you guys you should have gotten email, some kind of an invitation to relevant to Unity. Did you get that yet, or was it just me? Anyone?
I got it. Got it.
Okay, good. All right, so let me just show you. So Unity is an accessible tool. At least that's what they've prided themselves on up till now. We'll see about the future. I sense they're locking down things more than they have in the past, but I suppose that's only fair. So let's go to their website. Okay, you can always download if you have a problem with the license. So our intent is to provide you with an NPS purchased license. That's what that email is about. You should set up for it. You should use it because that's the right way to do things. But if you get into a bind, there is a free version of Unity which is fully capable for everything that I'm going to ask you to do in this course, and you could use the free one just fine. Okay, now they don't want that because they want to funnel students a certain way, and it could be it could be that if you plan to do a lot of stuff with Unity, there could be some things on the more advanced side where you actually get some advantage out of having the licensed student version. But the basic stuff that I'm going to talk about, you can do it with any version of Unity. It will be fine. Okay, now when you come on here and you click in to get started, if you haven't done this before, so this is kind of the path you're going to have to go. So you have to, or actually, I think there was a link in the email about setting up a Unity ID. Okay, so you could actually do that. But this would be how you get to the free one. You click Get Started. You see they're funneling you down the business route. And they want you to pay. Okay, but if you just click on Individual and you go over, and Personal would be the one that you can use without a license. Okay, so that's where that is. Now, if you've signed up, I mean, do be aware that to use the NPS license, I think you need to sign up with your NPS email address. I think that's a hard requirement, but I'm not 100% sure. So anyway, no reason not to, I would suppose. Okay, so once you have it, you can download, you'll be able to download Unity and start running it, okay? Once you get it downloaded, let me just show you. So, okay, this may be, well, good thing we're recording this. I guess it'll be there when you need it. So this is actually what Unity looks like. This is just something random that I'm working on, trying to get ready for a future class here. As you can see, it's a fairly complicated interface. So some steering around it is definitely needed when especially when you're new, even when you're not so new. Okay, once you have your license, I think the way it's going to work is you're still going to download a version of Unity, you fire it up, and it's not going to be licensed. The way you put your license in is you go into help here and then manage license, and then that should allow you to do what you need to do. Basically put in a license number, which hopefully it will accept, and everything will be good. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not sure why. Oh, because maybe so that thing that just came up there, that's called the Unity Hub. That's a relatively new addition to Unity. That's the normal front end. When you start it, start Unity. Let me go back into the hub here.
Yeah, all the licensing is done through Unity Hub now, so I don't think you can even do it through the project.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, fair enough. Yeah, it's the project is just pushing you back out to the hub, so that's presumably why.
Right, drop down a menu where it says CD and then manage license.
Oh yeah, yeah. So there you go. Okay, you see it's kind of flickering by, but you see manage license there is a second item. All right, so that's what you'll do. Now, just because some of you hopefully will already be getting started, let me just tell you the very basic stuff. I got 5 more minutes. I want to use them. The nice thing about the hub now is that it allows you to have any number of versions of Unity installed at one time. So if you look at this, these are all the versions of Unity. It's kind of ridiculous. That's 11 versions of Unity I have installed. You will not need 11 versions of Unity, but you may need more than one. Okay, so this makes it kind of nice to go and install when you're using online stuff, especially tutorials. So please listen to this. I wasted some time on this myself that I would like to get back. So at least I'll save you the time. They're pretty good about telling you up front, hey, this is for use with Unity versions between this version and this version. They're not always perfect, as I found out, but they're pretty good. So if you download, if you don't have a Unity version, sometimes it's kind of old. So if you don't have one that is in the right range, then you'll want to go and you'll go into this hub thing, right? Here's my projects, down here are my Unity installs, and you'll click on add, okay? And these are kind of the most recommended versions. So if one of these is in the range that you need, the one on top is the most recent release, the absolute, bloody cutting edge. These two are two previous stable, long-term supported releases. If what you need is not one of these, and this does happen sometimes, then you have to go to the download archive, which I'm going to click on here, and you'll see tons and tons and tons of versions. A little more ugly to deal with, but acceptable. Just go down here, find what you need, click on the green button, it will download. It takes a little while, okay, and then you will have a new install. How do you use the install? This is the other thing I want to show you. When you're starting up a new project, right, you come here and you go into new. If you just click on new, then I'm not actually sure what its default behavior is. I think it just uses the last version that you were using last time, as soon as you want to do the same, which may not be what you want. So instead of that, go into the drop down. Here you see all my many, many versions here. You will have fewer. Pick the one you want, okay? And then it will come through and prompt you, let you put the projects where you want them. Please find a good location for your projects for the course. They can be on the big side, so keep that in mind if you have multiple disks. You give your project a name, click create, and then you will be thrown into a completely new blank Unity environment, which is normally the starting point. For Rollerball, I think does start from a complete blank environment, but it may not. It may not. So a number of them, a number of them want to give you some assets to get started with, some code, some objects. So what they will do instead of that is they will have you download a starter project. That's definitely the case for Haunted Jaunt. Sorry, I can't remember about Rollerball. I haven't done that one for a couple of years. Okay, now, good. So that should be enough for you to download, get started. Oh, I did put another file out there. So this already already has some, this is not going to be lecture notes. I'm not really, I don't really use PowerPoint to lecture. These are kind of like notes to myself, but I decided to put them out so you guys could access them too, because that might be handy for you. Shows like the link to the manual, the link to the forums, just some handy stuff. Let me just make some comments, because Rollerball is so short. Some of you may blow through it tonight and already start the next one for all I know. Okay, if that's you, yeah, I found something kind of odd. So what they give you for the Haunted Jaunt is they give you a starter project. So this is a project that's very much not completed, but it has art assets. It has some of the code, so you're not going to have to build it all yourself. You suck that down and you use that to start the tutorials. If you don't have that, you'll right away be going, well, what are they talking about? I don't have that. Okay, download the starter project. They also have a completed version of the tutorial, a completed version that's all 100% done. You can just run it. You can see what it looks like to have, what you're aiming for, right? All of it's done. That's also pretty useful to have, right? Okay, now, yeah, what I found is, so there was, with Haunted Jaunt, the range wasn't 100% reliable. So these were my notes. So this is what I ended up using to actually do the tutorial, this version of Unity. You don't have to use that version, but I can tell you, because I just, over the last couple days, I've went through the whole tutorial using this and it went fine and there were no errors or anything. Okay, so recommended. And then this is for doing the tutorial, and then to do the complete version, to get it to run. I found I needed a different version to make that work. So this is the one that worked for me. So your mileage may vary, but I would recommend probably just sticking with these versions, because why not? Because you're just starting out. You probably don't want to waste time trying to figure out, why am I getting an error, or try to repair it, or Google around to try to figure out what's going on. It's probably better to just use install and use these two versions. Okay, so that's it for today. Parting shots from the student side.
So
Michael, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, do you recommend using Windows or Mac, or does it matter for these? Are we going to run into any hardware-related issues or needing a graphics card?
In principle, it shouldn't matter. I mean, people have done both in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be fine. Michael, anything from your side?
No, I would just second. Mac should be fine. Unity was originally built for Mac. There was no Windows. That came later.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. No, nothing comes to mind.
All right, cool. All right, so please let me know if you're having problems with Zoom or anything relating to the functioning of this this course. I encourage you to send me email right away, because we're all going to have to be figuring things out on the fly, and we won't be able to respond to issues that we don't know are existing. So please help us out, and otherwise, have a good rest of your day.
Hey, Chris, did you get my private email? Or chat?
Yes, I think I did. I saw it come in. So
Yeah.
I'll get to that. And yeah, I'm going to stop sharing here and check. I see there was a message.
Yeah, I was just going to see if we could chat real quick. You, me, and Mike.
Okay. Right. I think I need to end the meeting though, just because it's being recorded. And
Okay.
So let's find another mode of communication. I could maybe start it right up again, or maybe Michael has a suggestion, but let me just end it so I can push it.
Yeah,
up.
just start a new meeting. We'll pop back in.
All right.
Okay.